My laptop is just currently frozen.
All right.
Do you want power?
Can we no, I should be okay.
Okay.
But I do need projector. While we're doing this, I would just pull their phones out.
And you can
Go to
what's going on because mine's
35, 21, 3. Have a speaker feedback issue. So, live stream, no, I've done this before. It's not going to go low. While we're doing this, I'm going to pull it out. I go to menti.com. No. Low. Uh-oh.
yours. Mm-hmm. There we go.
All right.
Can you put a thing in to let Dave know that you're doing your thing? Right.
Starting now. Oh, shit.
Did you include the link?
Oops.
Yep.
Oh. So, my name's Aaron. I'm a tech lead at HBF. I guess Doug roped me into doing a C#9 project quite recently. So I thought I'd just do a little show and tell on the new stuff from C#9. I'm not an expert. If anyone knows anything, yell out. If you want me to type something up there, I can and see if it works. But to make something C#9, you need to change this from core to .NET 5, and you need the latest Visual Studio. So the first thing we're doing is top level statements. So this is your normal program.cs, and what they've done is said that you can now do, so this is valid C#. I think most of the examples were using statement, namespaces, classes, static, void, args. That's a whole bunch of stuff for someone coming into the language when people in JavaScript You muted?
Yep.
Good. Yep. Still shared. Yes, I am. All right. What is next? We got. Oh, so go back to your phones. I've got a. What does people think about this? Curious to see if anyone would use top level statements at all. I don't. Yeah, I'm probably there as well. C# team, if you're watching, sorry. Oh, is someone using it? Yeah, what are you using for? Yeah, that's fair enough. Turns it more into LinkPad, I guess. So top level statements are not explained very well by me. They are just, your program can have a statement at the top. It doesn't need all the main, static void main inside of your program. Thanks. Oh no. Everyone can see and hear you.
Yep. And share screen again.
Share screen.
Yep. And just say your entire screen. Okay, and you can do it.
Uh-oh.
Insert
Stack Overflow. I lost my notes. Next one was init only setters. So C# we can have read only, which means that if inside of the constructor we're not going to change anything. This can be set inside the constructor and that's it. But that's not really how we use C# anymore. We have we use object initializers to set things after we've done the constructor. So what we really want is to say, after I've constructed and done my object initializing, now I promise not to change anything. And so we can do that with it. Someone's done homework. And that will make it so that e dot is not allowed. And I think that could be useful to have something that's read-only but done through the way we tend to initialize objects nowadays. But that leads me into records. So a record is a brand new type that is essentially compiled down to a class, but acts like a reference type. When we compare things, it compares the values of stuff. They are read-only, so we can't change any things. They use the init from before. This is a person record. This is the syntax. They have inheritance, so developer can inherit from person with number of screens. But like classes, they can be sealed, which will stop that from working. At the end of the day, that just kind of compiles down to a class with a bunch of stuff added onto it to make them immutable, which is kind of important because now they're thread safe. They're read-only, and so I think they could be used for DTOs, transferring things around. Knowing that they can't change can make things easier. Did I do one for? Oh my God.
just call them like a class. First, last. So we've got P1 and AP2. So that is true. You can't just do that in code, but it evaluates the true because it looks at the values and compares them not by reference, by the actual values. It's over there. Can do, yeah, because it's a record. It's see over here, the overridden. Yeah, exactly. They have also, but you can do object reference equals. And that'll be false to show you that they're not the same. They are read-only, so if you want to copy one, you can go P3 equals P1, so that'll copy it. But if you want to just change, say, the last name, there's a new with statement. Your first name equals Bob, and that'll make a new. This will make a new P3 with everything copied. There's lots of properties, and just Bob is new. But at the end of the day, they are just classes, so you can add methods. What do you want? Full name. So if you've got any methods or what, you can stick them on here, and they just act like classes. So they're sort of somewhere between structs and classes, where immutable act like value types, but they're still reference types. You can also do that inside, and that, but now this has got a setter on it, which makes the whole thing not immutable. So you probably shouldn't do any of that. Yeah, they let you shoot yourself in the foot, but no, reference types, anything you want, other records. They can inherit from other records, but they can't inherit from classes. So that is, yeah. I think these are all public and no, but I think you can just override equals and yeah, let's do that. Override equals and then do your own equality check. One super duper nice thing is, so I'll get my case. Okay. Can work? Yes. Oh. Hey. Oh, because it's sealed. Oh. So when we write line P3, we get some kind of JSON blob. So it's not just usual object, which is kind of nice. That is what I had on records. Anyone have opinions on records? Yeah, I think this is the point where we stop stealing VB functionality and we start stealing F# functionality. Yeah. I don't know. No? There's a hash. There's dictionary. Like the Java ones? Hmm. Yeah.
So how will the hashing sum get hash rate bucket? Uses the quality override to work out the bucket. It's not so important with putting stuff in hash tables and stuff that if you start overriding the quality of the hash rate, you'll always get it wrong. This one isn't so good. It's the only way to get it right.
So I did see this. Yeah.
The way the hash tables work is
Winning.
So you're asking about can you compare two hash tables?
To see if the two hashes are the same.
Content. I don't think
We'll play after. Yeah. Hey, people might use them. What's next? Covariant return types. So, don't really have much on. Is when we override things, we can be covariant, which means we can return something more specific. So this is from the internet. Animal's overridden and animal returns food, we get food, but tiger returns meat. Interesting when Googling this, how there's lots of people from 2008 saying it's not possible and it can't be done. And then more of that than, hey, we did it. And I think Java got this a couple of versions ago. So, next one was pattern matching. Anyone using new pattern matching from C# 7, 8? They've made it better. So we can now do crazy things like a person with a null int. There is the relational pattern matching, which is in switch statements. You can now do less than, greater than, or equals to, or remember it's greater than or equals to, not the lambda way of doing things, because there's only so many letters on the keyboard. And I liked that one, had some nice symmetry to it. Yeah, but you can whack in brackets around stuff to make your ORs and ANDs all make sense or not. But I think the best thing about adding this functionality is you can now go, instead of if P is null, you can now do P is not null, which I think is kind of useful. What else can you do with that? That is about it for person with what? Yes. You worked at birth, deaths, and marriages, and age can be nullable. Which makes, I guess, date passing hard. Did I have a minty one for this one? I think I did. Pattern matching. Do you think people use it? Ooh. So what? P switch or P dot? Oh, the switch. P dot H. No. Do you have ReSharper or some other million Visual Studio tools that might have done that?
It does work.
Yeah. Yeah, all the visual. So. Okay. Should we repeat the questions? No, that's a good idea because there are people out there. Next, I had target type new expressions. So before we had var p equals new person, and they've switched that around. So if you really want, you can do person equals new, which, yes, I thought pointless as well. Person p. There we go. Okay. Yeah, I first thought. Yeah, but can anyone see why this won't work? Yeah. But siblings, which I liked having the children called siblings, is not defined. So when you add a person to null, it will explode. So you can do that, which is kind of nice, especially if this is a list of dictionaries of iblars that get, and you need to just whack on a new one. The other one I can see is in unit tests, if you just need something in your list and you don't give a crap what, that can be good. The thing you probably shouldn't do is that, where P is new all the way down here and nowhere near where you define it, because no one's going to be able to read that. Oh, because it's behind person. Unused local, because that. I think this class can't be here either. What else is next? Oh, lambda discard. So we've had discard parameters for a while. We can now do discards for the lambda. The thing I thought of this was WinForms, when we don't care what sender or event args are. You just want to call a method when something was clicked. So I think that's a little incremental change. Next is performance. There's been a few performance things. native size integers. So we can now have nints, which are native size integers, which means if it's a 32-bit system, you'll get a 32-bit int. If it's a 64-bit system, you get a 64-bit int, and it'll decide a bit later. This can have some low-level performance improvements for kind of stuff I don't deal with, but somebody might. There is, functional pointers. So now function pointers are a thing. We did have actions, which are pointers to functions, but they do a whole bunch of safe .NET things, which slow them down. Delegate star just turns into a function call in x86 world, so it is much faster. But if your actions are too slow, you're also in a different world to me, because also because of the way C# rules are, if you've got a pointer, you're now unsafe. So they have to be used in unsafe world, which, does anyone use unsafe daily? No? Someone must. Daily? Yeah. Friday nights. Another local. So when you don't initialize variables, C# will add a little set this thing to like zero out the variable. And so if you're in unsafe again, you'll see that if you add this skip local init attribute, it won't zero it out, and whatever was in the memory will be still in the memory. And that one little step will, I guess, make performance worse. That might affect you. It doesn't affect me. So I think these are the ones under performance improvements. I don't know how much useful they'll be to me, but I think for low-level framework people, they might be good. I had a little lengthy one for this. So I'm curious to see if these performance features will help anyone here. All right. Yeah, you probably use them by the libraries that you use. Yeah, I think maybe you had something?
No, when you need it, you really need it. But if you don't, then just do it like
yeah. Oh, we got a 1. Is that someone on the internet or someone here? Do you have anything else for me? No? So the very last one I had was source code generators. So code generating is back in fashion. They've added some hooks into Roslyn. So if you add a dependency, okay, still had it. Oh. View. Sorry, lost it. How do I view my project file? Up, down, double click. No. Solution file. It went away. Add a reference and add the output type of analyzer. These will add some. What these do is they run first. You can hook into the compile time, and it will generate C# files that you can then reference in your project. You can't change code. You can only add stuff. The main big advantage of this is we now use a lot of reflection on startup when we start up, do dependency injection and loop through stuff. That can't be figured out until runtime. So, and you lose all the AOT advantages that Roslyn's been adding slowly over time. This way you could do all that explicitly in a code-generated thingy, and then you include the reference to it in your project. The tooling's not great. The first time you have it, it doesn't compile because the file doesn't exist. You have to restart Visual Studio, but they're working on it. This is straight out of the Roslyn SDK. There was a little sample project. Oh, fun. The examples they had is, okay, this is just crashing. Settings generator. So instead of creating an object, a POCO that matches your settings file and then using iOptions and mapping it and blah, 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 you can just have a settings file. It will loop over the file, find the types, create a class for you automatically, and then you can have something that loads settings into the class that it created, and then your code just uses it. The other option was iNotify property changed. You just want to automate that. The way they work is you get a initialize and a execute method, which hooks into Roslyn. You can then start adding C#, and it will get generated and included into your project. So this hello loops through all of the types in the syntax tree and says writes them out. And then down here, say generate, say hello. So before that gives you a squiggle until you can run it once, but it is getting better. I don't know. I think some very smart people will do some very clever stuff with this. Like I know in AWS, Lambdas have a really, really bad startup time, and maybe a lot of it can be moved into code generation, and so it can just, they can start up faster. You don't think, Piers? Just copying them over. Yeah. I don't know, it depends how you, if you set up a whole DI thing and loop through your assembly to find stuff, that's stuff that doesn't have to happen. Because, I don't know, I think some smart people will make some useful things with these, and everyone, because they can be distributed as NuGet packages, and then you can just add them. So I don't have any good uses for them, like ideas to build any of them, but I think people will in the next couple of years. Anyone have any thoughts? Oh, two. Yeah, and then go over your classes and then add them. Yeah. But it is in the, they have implemented it, so it is in the SDK for you to have a look at. Thoughts? Source generators? Any humor? Hmm? Ah. Wait. Another one. But generally groovy, I guess. But that is all I had of things from C# now. So I guess, Doug?
Still. There we go.
Speakers? Oh, she's still sharing my crash.
Seems to be frozen. How do I set up? most of the technical issues never go away. And we haven't even hit the demo yet. This is just PowerPoint. Okay.
Here's some penguins.
I do. Yes. All right. Views.
Okay.
Here's some penguins.
I do. Yes.
All right. Views.
Okay. Hi everyone, and just one sec. There. So my bit was meant to go first, but yeah, technical issues. So what I'm covering is just sort of a very high-level view of the launch of .NET 5 and what it means. I've borrowed it fairly heavily from, or well, plagiarized, I suppose you could say, from the presentations that are available at the .NET presentations, Conf main event, etc. is the repo for it. A lot of them are there, a lot of the slides are there. Very few of the code samples are there, which is unfortunate, but there are some. Also, if you do pull down that repo, you'll get the last .NET comps for the last 2 years as well. So if you want. Yeah, just skipping. I'm going to be just talking about what it's really all about, because that was sort of the first thing. So .NET 5, what's going on? Is it core? Is it what? Talking about how they're planning on doing release. So yeah, the idea and the promise was that there would be one unified .NET, and we didn't really get that, but it's in the pipeline. It's on the way. What we did have, or what we had before November, was the framework, the core, and Mono and Xamarin. A lot of different tools, a lot of different ways to target those executables and things like that. The plan was to merge those in just to the single .NET, and we didn't actually get there. So what we've actually got is .NET Framework 4.8. That's not going away. That's in long-term support, and they'll just keep it there as long as forever. There are things in Windows that have been going back since Windows probably 2 that are people still relying on. So I imagine, you know, it's going to be grandfathered in. .NET 3.1 became .NET 4. .NET Core 3.1 became .NET Core 4, which was supposed to get Mono and Xamarin merging into it. They renamed that .NET 5, but Mono and Xamarin aren't coming in just yet. That's due to come in .NET 6. So .NET 5 is .NET Core 4.0, just in case you're wondering where it all came from. But the numbers were getting confusing because the .NET Framework 4 point something, .NET Core 3 point something, they could have done a 4 in there, but hey, marketing. And it's actually a little bit easier to understand, although 4.0 is obviously better than 4.8. But yeah, 5 is much more clearly the thing that we're after. Hang on a sec. Okay. There's a bunch of things they've left out. So app domains have been replaced by assembly load contexts. Remoting, you get name pipes and gRPC or remote procedure calls. Web forms is going away and being replaced by ASP.NET Blazor. WCF, again, is going away. For one, I'm going to miss it. Being replaced with gRPC, and there is an open source WCF version. And Windows Workflow is again going down the open source path if you had a particular use for it.
The idea behind it is they're going to do a release. This is the cadence they promised in the thing. In the presentations. So they'll be doing quarterly releases starting in November. Every year there'll be in November there'll be a major version. So come November next year we'll get .NET 6, and the even-numbered versions will have long-term support. So we'll get version numbers that look like that. The first bit is the highest version you can actually target with that particular version of the SDK. That's the quarter that came out. So it's only going to be 5.0.1, 2, 3, and 4, I would assume, and then a patch on the end of that. Then you get the target framework monikers, which is just an easier way to address how you're going to be referring to the libraries and things like that, or what framework you're actually going to try and target. So we start off with netx.y, so that's, in this case, 5. You can then have -os for the examples they've given are for Windows, Android, iOS, but in principle it could be anything that someone writes the appropriate things for. And then you can have the minimum version for minimum OS version. So if you're saying, okay, I'm going to be targeting .NET 5.0, then that's your that's just the basic APIs that everyone gets. If you say, right, I want .NET 5.0-Windows, then you get WinForms and WPF. And then if you go down to the specifics there, you say, okay, if I want Windows 10 whatever, I get the APIs. There was actually something I wanted to mention on the previous one. One of the things that they weren't clear on, and it's not going to give me that anyway, what they're planning on using the second, it's 5.0, and then the next one is, so I've got that wrong. No? Okay, there we go. Exactly what they'll be using that one for. It would have made more sense to me at least, and it's quite possible I've got it wrong. If anyone wants to have a quick Google and check, that'll be the version, that'll be the patch, the point will be the patch, and then, the point will be the quarter. It's sort of not quite semantic versioning there. Okay, so getting back to the target framework moniker, you can then specify what you want to use. So in here, you can see an example taken out of a project file. It's going to be a Windows executable. Our target framework is .NET 5, but our supported platforms are Windows 7. And you can actually, they've got a bunch of APIs that you can include in there to query the operating system and the version of the operating system and things like that, so that you can put a gate around it. So you can actually say my target framework is Windows 10, but I'm going to support Windows 7. And their code analyzers will say, will give you a little red squiggle if you don't put a gate around that to say, hey, I'm only going to be doing this particular SDK call if I'm actually really running Windows 10, which is kind of useful. Although I think it's potentially a bit confusing to say I'm targeting Windows 10, but I'm going to support Windows 7, which is one thing in the Windows world, but I imagine that's going to be a bit more important if you're targeting, say, Android, where you really, I mean, Apple tends to force their operating systems a bit more aggressively, but Google is not the same with their versions of Android, and so you'll have phones relying on their manufacturers to put out older versions. So you'll be able to say, look, I'm really targeting this version, but we're going to support back to these ones. So yes, it's useful, and they're making it easier to do that sort of interrogation of the operating system you're running on. Okay, that's sort of a very, as I said, high-level view of what's going on. Probably one of the first things that I thought about is, okay, what about changing everything over to .NET 5? Well, if you're running .NET Core, it's pretty straightforward. It's just the next rev of .NET Core. But the first thing you really want to do is, why are you doing it? The current version of .NET Core is in long-term support. Visual Studio Framework 4.8 is also in long-term support, so they're going to be around for ages. Is there a particular driver for doing this? Is there something, are you now going to be targeting different operating systems, so your previous programs won't work with those other ones? And if you don't need to, then don't do it. If it's not broken, don't fix it unless there's features in there that you really do want. Of course, saying that we need to port to a newer version is always a good reason to throw away the old stuff and bring in some new, but that's more of a rewrite than just porting the old ones along. The next recommended step is, if things work, there we go, just go through everything. They've got a tool called API Port to help you, I'll demo that in a bit, work out what APIs you've got used in your project and what's going to work. Check your legacy code and work on cleaning that up before you actually try and port things over. And they've got the various analyzers and things like that that'll help you go through. The idea being is that, say you're running in .NET Core 3, if you can then just tidy that up so that it works, so that it's not going to be using any of the legacy stuff that gets dropped off in .NET 5, it'll make life a bit easier for you. Then you just go through and update your projects, tidy up your SDKs and style files and things like that. And they actually have a tool that does the only migrating project files for you, so it can make things a bit easier. Now, I'll just call out to say that I did actually plagiarize some of this. I probably would have said just checkpoints rather than click stops. Go through each step. If you don't have source control behind it, well, good luck to you. But branching a lot and merging and stuff. Things that weren't very good in earlier versions, but now that we're all using distributed version control systems, I think that's pretty much second nature. Well, I do remember there was a podcast I listened to, and the point I stopped listening to that podcast was where one of the presenters said, yeah, version control is great if it works for you, but it just doesn't for me. And it's just, there's no point taking anything he said after that. Just remembered we're alive. Hopefully they're not out there. Yeah, then move, have a look at your dependency graph and how everything's going. Port things off over to the .NET framework and retarget those to standard, and then migrate everything that's in .NET Core over to .NET 5. And then you can start looking at running on other operating systems or taking advantage of those other features that you were particularly keen on grabbing. Okay, now I've taken, well, as I said, plagiarized a lot of that from the excellent presentation on porting applications to .NET 5. The repo for the porting demo is there, but I'll walk you through it anyway. So just give me a moment. Okay. Here we have it.
Northwind.
And apparently not. Just a sec, sorry. Over there. Okay. So, excuse me for a sec. I'm looking for the console. Just a sec, sorry guys, I'll switch that over again. That's because that's Visual Studio, not Visual Studio Code. Right.
Dark mode.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. Maximize that. Move that to the other window. I'm using the tool I was expecting to be using. Actually, I'll just... Yep. Okay. So the hang on there. Things look to be painfully slow.
The light's going down the serial port.
Okay, guys, I'm afraid this is just going to be... Oh, we got a D.
Oh, you got no?
All right. I'll. That's just no idea what's going on with this machine.
I'm down to 12% battery, so I think the StreamYard doesn't help.
Okay. All right. I'll just call it quits on that demo because it's just not going to work for me. Essentially, I was going to talk about a couple of tools, which they also demo there, and you've got the sample project they've got for porting it, which are okay. API port. You can do just a simple .NET tool install -G API port, so it's very NPM-ish. Then you run API port analyze with -F for the folder and a dot. And if that was working, it would generate you a nice little Excel spreadsheet, which I didn't prepare earlier, where you can see exactly what libraries and folders you've got, what are going to give you problems when you're trying to convert them, and so forth. Then you can do another .NET tool install for try-convert, and you run that, and it goes through and updates all your project files. I might try later on, but essentially, yeah, then it just gives you the new versions. It does save the old versions as a .old, just in case you weren't using.
Do you think it would work on a medium-sized project?
Yes, they have said it will work on extremely big projects. The example that's there on that repo does include WinForms, WPF, class library, and a command line app. Obviously, it won't let you convert those to .NET Core. To .NET 5 without the Windows bit, -Windows on it, because you need those for WinForms and WPF. All right, that's really a pretty rushed version, but that's what I've got. And there are a few things that I did stumble upon while I was watching hours of YouTube related to .NET 5. And I'd really like to see some more, if anyone's been working using Blazor, which is the sort of the WebAssembly and web forms stuff. That'd be good. There's a lot of content out there, but not anything that I've had a chance to have a play with yet. It looks particularly interesting and tempting because at the moment I'm busy working in React Native and mostly fighting the Mac. The other thing which looks really interesting is Project Tie, which is a tool to streamline microservice development and deployment. The idea being it's just going to make that much faster to do, to implement, and to run, and then easier to deploy. I've done a little bit of reading, but not enough to sort of explain about it. But I would suggest anyone out there, if you would like to present, or if that sounds interesting, or both, have a look up on Project Tie and see what's happening. That's going to be coming in, I think it's a separate project, but I believe they're planning to have that out for .NET 6. But yeah, there's a bunch of things out there. So that was it. Thanks everyone for coming. And thanks again to Diversis for feeding us and providing us with drinks, and to Space Cubed, or
I think Space Cubed.
Space Cubed for providing us with a venue. And thanks everyone for coming. It's been everyone knows what sort of year it was, but it's really good to see so many people coming along, and hope to see more of you in the new year. The plan will be...
And the plan is to run them every month. We don't normally do January because we'll be doing the first Tuesday or Thursday of the month, and no one's going to want to come on first Tuesday in January. No, people are still on leave. But if you want to do like a presentation, like our high quality thing that we just did, find a topic. If you can't think of a topic, feel free to message us or talk to someone, and we can put something together.
Yeah. One thing that perhaps not this presentation, but other ones that I've done in the past, one way to really focus your attention on learning something is to have to get ready to give a presentation.
Conference-driven development.
It's always it's always fun, but it gives you a chance to focus on some of the new features you haven't had a chance to play with properly. Alternatively, if you've got a case study, some things that you've been doing in the real world, and you'd like to tell us how that's gone, lessons learned, any cool stuff you've done, that's also welcome.
Or how it went wrong. They're always funny.
Yep. And similarly, if there's a project or an open source project or anything like that that you'd like to feature, we're open to that. So hit us up through Meetup and so on. And
let's stick around. There's more pizza and drink, and we're going to get friends in. So
yeah, we'll see you later. And thanks to everyone who joined the live stream. We plan, it's still going. We're planning on doing that each time, assuming they let us back. And thanks to the .NET Foundation, and there's a virtual .NET user group. And so you can see other .NET user groups presenting from around the world. And so, assuming they'll let us back, I'd like to be doing streaming each of these ones.
Yeah, Andrew mentioned today that 23,000 people got a notification that this was going on, which is kind of crazy. There's 23,500 YouTube subscribers to the channel, where whatever we just made will be there forever.
Okay, thanks a lot.